Oh, Hannah's walking home from school.
Who?
Yeah. I feel like my window like looks directly where like people leave school, so I can like always see them coming home. And I'm like, so creepy.
Wow. Where's Raphael?
He just texted on the group chat like 5 minutes ago, so he should be joining in any moment. Any moment-ish. How many people are expected to join in, Camila? Like around 10 or so?
Yeah, about 10, I think.
So we're not going to see their faces. They're just going to type us questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I was the only one who didn't know.
Do you guys want to do some practice questions?
Oh, yeah. What would be a practice question, guys? So you just want us to like give a little spiel of like why we thought we got into med school? Like not because we're Hispanic, but just like in general? Right?
Yeah, just general advice. Like what you think set you apart. Oh, there he is. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Raph.
Hi.
Hola, Rafael.
Is that a picture? Is that, yeah, right?
Okay, camera on.
There he is.
Cool stuff.
Is that your apartment, Rafael? You at home?
Yes.
Wow.
I don't have a lot of light right now.
Okay. Why should turn on the light anyway?
Oh, yeah. Hopefully the connection doesn't go down, and then when like our faces get stuck in that or put in that
That's always the worst.
yeah. Who is that?
You think people are gonna come to this?
Yeah, we got 4 people watching right now.
How many people are watching?
4 people.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, you
I
can
can-
tell. Oh, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll give it a couple minutes because I think there was maybe like 10 on the email list.
Wait, can they hear us right now? Right? Yeah.
Yeah, you're live right now. Don't say anything stupid.
Can they see what we type too? Or the chat is
I can't see what you type.
okay.
But there is an option. If you guys are on the computer, there's a way to like share what's on your computer screen. If you ever want to do that.
Mm. Yeah, I've done that before.
All right, so we'll just wait a couple minutes and then we'll go ahead and get started. For those who already joined, can you try typing a comment through the YouTube just to make sure that I can see it? Okay. So yeah, I see, Esther Guerrero's here, Alina's here, and Maria's here. They all say hello.
Hi guys.
Hey, everyone.
Hi.
I wish I could see your faces.
And then, like I said, the cool thing about this is it's just gonna make like a YouTube video out of it. So after, if you want to watch it again, it's just gonna be a YouTube link for the whole thing.
Okay. You think we're gonna go viral or?
Probably.
Only
Prepare yourself.
Oh, and there is a bit of a time lag, as Lily was noticing. So, like, just try not to all talk at the same time, because then it's gonna get pretty messy. So, like, if I say, "Oh, Rafa, what's your opinion about this?" Just give your opinion, and then wait a couple seconds, and then I'll say, "What about you?"
Sounds good.
Copy that.
And for those who already joined, can you just confirm you guys can see us fine? You guys can hear everything just fine? Yeah, it looks like everything's good. Okay, so we'll give it a couple more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get started. If there's any questions you guys want to ask now, I'm able to see the chat now, so you guys can start sending in your questions.
Can we see their questions, Camilo, or only you?
I only see
I don't-
names.
You can see them on the YouTube chat. So
Okay, I see. Okay.
the email I sent, but if you shoot that open, like if you shoot, make sure to mute it, otherwise you start echoing.
Oh, okay.
You did it.
We're not being taken to the YouTube channel, just the Hangouts thing.
What's that?
How do I get to the YouTube channel?
So I sent an email.
Yeah, I opened that and it prompted me to the Google Hangouts.
Oh, it's another link.
Another link? Okay, let me check again.
I replied to the email chain.
Oh, okay.
But I got the questions here. I
Okay.
can take that, but don't worry about that.
Okay.
All right. So we got 7 people now. So we'll go ahead and get started. So
Okay.
first, what I'd like to do is go ahead and introduce everybody. So we were all second-year students at Wayne State University School of Medicine, which is kind of good because we're not that far removed from the application process. I think a year ago, all of us would have been pre-meds, so we kind of know what it's like to be in your shoes. So yeah, like I said, I'd like to introduce everybody, and if everybody could just, in addition to introducing yourself, also say the one thing that you think set you apart in your medical school application. So what's your one thing that you did that you think really helped you get in? And I'll go ahead and start. So my name's Camilo. Like I said, I'm in second year university at the University School of Medicine. I'm actually a Canadian, so I actually applied as an international student to Wayne. And so what I would say was my biggest thing for medical school applications is that, whatever you are going to do, try to do it with a lot of passion. My resume, my application didn't have like a ton of activities or anything crazy, but the stuff that it did have, you could tell that I did it with a lot of passion because I was able to talk about it a lot, and I had letters of recommendation to back it up. So, in other words, try to avoid just going through stuff just for the sake of checking the box. Don't just do the volunteer experience because you know you have to. Really try and give it your all, and that's really going to show when you have to write about all these experiences and potentially get letters and talk about it in interviews. If you really give it your all, it's going to be a lot better experience. So it's not so much what you do; it's more how you do it. Would be my advice. And really, medical school applications, anything goes, like any volunteer experience. They're not that strict about exactly what you do. They more want to see about the lessons you learn. So we'll go ahead and introduce our next guest speaker, Lily Bonatona. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and say what you think set you apart.
Okay, thanks, Camilo. Nice intro. Hi, everybody. So I'm Lily, like Camilo said. I'm the president of the Latino Medical Student Association. So I'm really happy we got to set this up with you guys. And also after this, we're happy to meet in person too, so we can talk more about that later. But like Camilo, I'm originally from Canada, but I have a U.S. citizenship as well, so I applied as an American. For me, I took 4 years off after undergrad, before med school. So I think during that time, I had a lot of research experience in something that I was really passionate about, which was infectious diseases in Latino populations. I was working in Peru for 3 years. So I think that experience really set me apart from everybody else. When I came out of undergrad, I didn't have the most competitive GPA. And so I was like kind of concerned if I was going to get into med school or not. So I took time to really build up my resume in other ways and do something that I really wanted to do, which was research. So I think that's what set me apart from other people when we did get to apply. Like I said, even though I didn't have the most competitive GPA. And yeah, I kind of echo what Camilo says, that doing something that you're passionate about is a good way to just being sincere really comes out in applications and when you're chatting with people during interviews as well.
Thanks, Lalo. Okay, we'll go to Louisa now.
Okay. Hi, I'm Luisa. I'm from California originally. And I actually graduated from undergrad in 2014. I applied to med school and I didn't get in. So I did a post-bac program through UCLA, which was nice because it was a small cohort of 9 of us. And it was specifically targeted for reapplicants. So we had all, applied, didn't get in. So they, depending on our strength or like weakness, we'd either have to like retake our MCAT if we did badly in it, or take more courses to increase our GPA. So I actually had to do both because I had taken the old MCAT and it was that transition to the new MCAT. So I retook the MCAT and also took more science courses to increase my GPA. So I felt what helped me get in this cycle was just that upward trend that they noticed. I increased my MCAT score, I increased my GPA, and I felt I was also well-rounded in the sense that I had research in my application, volunteering experience, and all these other things. And how Camilo mentioned, like, make your application unique. And for me, it was knitting. I spoke about how that helped me, like, with stress and stuff. So, sometimes it doesn't have to be like the common things like, oh, I'm in a sports team or anything. It could be like something silly. Like in my case, that was knitting. So yeah, that's
Definitely.
it.
Awesome.
Whatever sets you apart and makes you unique, as creative as it may be, they definitely appreciate that. So we'll go to May now.
Okay, hey everyone, I'm May Chama. I'm Syrian American, so I'm the only one in the group today that isn't Latino or Hispanic. I think the thing that set me apart in the application process, kind of building off of what Camilo and Luisa said, I think one unique thing on my application was that I was very service driven, so I had a lot of involvements that were service-based, like volunteering in the community, both clinical and non-clinical. And another thing is, I think it showed on my application that I had like a very upward trend because I had a very bad first year academically. And so for the remaining of my undergrad years, you could definitely see like an upward trend. And I think that reflected well because I was able to speak about it in a good way in my applications and explain like what went wrong and like how I went about fixing it and improving.
Cool.
So I think like if you have any weaknesses in your application, knowing how to put like a spin on it and like in terms of what you learned and how you became a better applicant because of that is always a good thing.
Definitely. And lastly, Raphael.
Yep. So hi guys, nice to be here with you all. So my name is Raphael. I'm the VP of the Latino Medical Student Association here on campus. My journey to med school is a little bit different, mostly because I'm part of the MD PhD cohort here in the school. And what that means is that after our first 2 years, I'm going to take a quote unquote break to get a PhD in a medical science. So these guys are going to go on and be doctors, and I'm going to still be in school. But what that means is that I really like benchtop research. So I really like getting into the nitty gritty background in terms of like doing benchtop science, doing the sort of research that they tell you that you're supposed to do like during undergrad. And because of that, I graduated with a degree in biomedical engineering back in 2016. I applied there like to transition directly to med school. And because I focused so much on this like wannabe research aspect, since I didn't think that I was competitive enough to get into MD PhD programs at that point, it actually ended up working in my detriment because I talked about all of this research and not about what made me passionate about being a doctor in my application. So I obviously reapplied after the fact. I got a master's, which I finished up last year, also in biomedical sciences, and it sort of helped sort of buoy my application to the dual degree program. But I used my time during my master's to really understand why I wanted to go into healthcare. I really got into hospitals. I got into shadowing, and I sort of pulled away the facade of what you sort of expect is the stereotypical medical involvement. And I think if you compare my essays between the two application cycles, it definitely shows a little bit more. So I guess something to just keep in mind for the application is really know what you're getting into in terms of healthcare, because I don't doubt that you all have the passion to go into the field. Sometimes just knowing a little bit of the reality of what it is you're getting yourself into, why you're going to put yourself through med school, all the studying, a little bit of the hardship of internship. Know that it's something that you want to do, and it's something that you'll definitely be able to convey once the application cycle rolls around.
Thank you, Raphael. It's not just about what you do, right? It's really about why you do it and the lessons you learn, because in applications, you always have to explain, what you learned, and interviews are going to ask you, what you got out of the experience and how it's going to make you a better doctor. So as you're going through these activities that you do, always try and kind of reflect, okay, what am I learning from this? How does it relate to my goal to want to be a doctor? And kind of keep track of this as you go, because, I know when I applied, I had to try to think back to like 4 years ago, and I was like, I don't even remember what I did, let alone like what I learned. So that would be that's a good piece of advice that I think we can all give, was to actually reflect on your experiences and kind of take those lessons and those messages of why you're doing the things that you're doing. And so we'll go ahead and go to the questions now. The first question we got was, what was our undergrad major? For me, I did the standard like human biology major. The general advice you get as far as majors go is it doesn't really matter what you do. Any bachelor's of science is fine. So I just did the standard human bio degree. I don't know if let's see, Lily, what degree did you do?
So I actually had a major in anthropology with a minor in creative writing. So I was pretty unique from that respect in the application. But I also think that made me stand out because I spent a lot of time talking about social determinants of health and a bit of more of the philosophical spin on healthcare. And also I think just from majoring in anthro with a focus in medical anthropology, I got to do a lot more like critical thinking on like why healthcare is the way it is today, and just being like, very critical about it. Really, you can major in anything. I would recommend major in what like you love, because in med school you're gonna learn all the science like you need, and you'll get those pre-med courses. But like I think undergrad is like you can explore. You know what I mean? Don't think you have to major in a science to get to med school, because I didn't.
Yeah, the school they definitely assume that basically that you don't know anything. The School of Medicine. I mean, they'll teach you everything you need to know, so it definitely won't be a disadvantage if you do something outside of science. Really, any major is fine for medical school. The
And
next
I know,
question. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know May majored in philosophy, so.
Yeah, I can go next then since
Yeah.
you threw me under the bus there. Yeah, I did major in philosophy, which is kind of like what Lily said. It was a cool chance to do a lot of exploring outside of medicine, and that did give me an opportunity to kind of talk about that during my interview because it was different. But then again, I think it was good because it was something I was passionate about. So definitely, if you are passionate about like something within the sciences, definitely don't force yourself to like do something outside of that. But if you happen to be passionate about something outside of the sciences, then go for it.
Let's go to the next question. You guys, for anybody who might have joined recently, we're using the YouTube chat to take your questions. So any question you guys have at all, just type it in through there. The next question we got was, how difficult was the application/interview process for getting into medical school? Do you want to talk about that at all?
You know, it was expensive, so that it's annoying in that respect. But I don't know. There's the one main essay you have to do, and I put a lot of time into that essay, and had like several people read it over. Getting people to read it and like help you make it better, I think, is a good advice. But as far as the secondaries, I felt like a lot of people asked sort of similar questions on the same themes. But once you really got into the groove of it, it wasn't that fun. But interviewing, I would say the biggest advice for that is to do a mock interview, especially before your first one, from a med student or from someone who knows how the application process goes, because then they can give you really good advice too, and it also like helps calm your nerves once you've done a practice one.
Okay. Louisa, anything that you want to talk about as far as, challenges? Maybe you're an out-of-state applicant, so what was that process like applying as out-of-state? How difficult would you say it was?
I felt traveling was really difficult. Just getting that notice, like, oh, you're invited for an interview, and just finding a flight. Sometimes it'd be expensive. It'd be like a $200, or no, actually, I paid I think close to $500 when I flew to Michigan. So depending on what state you're traveling to, your expense could be more or less. So that was pretty annoying or / difficult when applying. So definitely try to save as much money as you can when you do apply. Luckily, when I did apply, I had, what was the FAP, I think. So it helped me like it waived a lot of my secondary costs and stuff. So that was helpful. And then what Lily said about writing, yes, I'm not a good writer. So when it came to the essays and all the secondary stuff, I had difficulty with. So I had about 4 people reading my stuff. I didn't want to get too many people involved because then you get too many opinions and then it just messes you up. Mm-hmm. So I feel just having like a small group of people like review your essays is helpful. But to that note, it's also advanced, like for the supplements. A lot of the questions become pretty repetitive from different schools, so you could start recycling a lot of your responses to stuff. So that was helpful as well. Yeah, that's it.
And I'm not sure if maybe your question was more about like just kind of raw numbers, what you need to be competitive applicant in medical school applications. In the case of that, so for GPA, you're looking at about a 3.7 and up, really competitive, and I think below that it starts to become a bit of a detriment. So, that is pretty high. If you're not there yet in your first couple of years, something that we've talked about already is that schools do take into account like upward trends. So if you do really well your 3rd and 4th years, it can sometimes make up for not doing too well in your first couple of years. So don't let that number intimidate you if you haven't done so well so far. And then as far as other stuff, we do have to take what's called the Medical College Admissions Test, also known as the MCAT. And so that test will test basically the prerequisite coursework from mostly your first 2 years in undergrad. So it has, general chemistry, organic chemistry, physics. It also has psychology, sociology, and verbal reasoning also, and biochemistry. And so that's really the big test for medical school admission that every single American medical school will use. And generally, students take that usually after second year or third year, because that's when all this coursework is most fresh in your head. So we can talk about that later, a bit more about like specific advice on how to study for the MCAT, because I know I just got a question about that. But as far as the other question, which was like, what kind of scores do you need? The MCAT, really, you want to do about 75th percentile up. So you want to try and beat 75% of people who took the MCAT that day. So it is challenging. We can talk a little bit more about, how we studied for that. And then the other aspects of the application include things like research, extracurriculars. Research is becoming kind of like a soft requirement that you more or less need some level of research, even if it's just like a summer of research. Also, clinical volunteering, non-clinical volunteering, and shadowing as well are a lot of things that kind of becoming required in medical school. So it is a lot, but from what I've heard, a lot of you guys still have time to do it. So really look to get involved with stuff like that during your summers, and if you can manage it during the school year as well. We'll go ahead. The next question.
Well, Camilo, can I add to that?
Yeah, go ahead, Luisa.
Yeah, so when I was
Sure.
doing my post-bac, it was directly with like the School of Medicine. So I don't know if it's only California or if it's everything, but we'd have guest speakers from like the admissions committees from UC Davis, UCLA, and they said that for being like a disadvantaged student, the average, like for what Camille said, is 3.7. If you're disadvantaged, that number is actually lowered. So keep that in mind. Also, if you are applying as a disadvantaged student, you don't have to aim for that 3.7. It could actually be like 3.5 or lower, because they take that into account. Just you don't have the same resources as the other people did. So. And then as far as the MCAT, since it's so new, another thing I would say is that they don't really, a lot of the schools, they don't really know what is like the right, I guess, MCAT score with this new one. Like before they knew like if you scored like 30 or I forgot what it was like the good number, but now they won't have a good idea until like a person has graduated through medical school, and then they'll get a better idea of, if they're accepting students getting 500 on the MCAT was good enough or not. So those are some advice.
Can I add something as well to that? Just like a quick reminder, even though I think like something to keep in mind, that even though it's important to like aim for like a high average, it is an average at the end of the day. So that means there are people that got in that were below it, and medical schools do they do balance everything, and they take into account like your circumstances and like everything else you've done. So if you do have a low GPA, like a higher MCAT score could like make that up. And just like don't be discouraged if your numbers are below the average, because there's definitely ways that you can make that up. And yeah, that's it.
Definitely, and just to kind of emphasize what Luisa said, because I know most, and if not all of you, are actually Hispanic background. So medical schools, they have what they classify as underrepresented in medicine. So groups that, the numbers of physicians don't actually represent how many patients there are in the American population. And schools actually place a lot of emphasis on trying to recruit more members who are underrepresented in medicine in order to be able to provide better healthcare to patients. So it's been shown that, patients do prefer physicians who kind of share the same ethnic background as them. And in fact, Hispanics, along with African Americans and Native Americans, do fit the criteria of underrepresented in medicine. So for all of you guys that means that schools are going to make more of an effort to recruit you, and you're going to be seen as more of a kind of a positive for the schools to have. I kind of did the math just based on like the data they have, so I can share a link with you guys. It's what the application process will say, like of all the applicants who were Hispanic with a certain GPA and MCAT, what percentage of them got in compared to white applicants or Asian applicants. And in general, it comes out to, if you're Hispanic, for a given GPA or MCAT, you got about a 15 to 20% greater chance of acceptance compared to white applicants. So it will become an advantage for you guys to be part of a an underrepresented group. But also that's not a reason to kind of take it easy, right? It still remains highly competitive. So regardless of that, always do your best no matter what. And the next question I got here was, have any of us failed the class? So I never did personally. I know if you do, you most schools actually give you the opportunity to explain a low grade or a failed class. So it's not like make it or break a deal. There's an opportunity to retake the class to explain what challenges you faced in the class that led you to fail. So it's not a deal breaker for sure. Have any of you guys ever, not even maybe failed the class, but gotten like a pretty low grade in a course?
I did.
Yeah, I can speak for that too. Go ahead, Lisa.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. So my first quarter of undergrad, I got a D in calculus, a C minus in chemistry, and I forgot what else. Probably like a B or something else. But yes, I had to retake that. The C minus, we're not allowed to retake. Or were we? No, actually, yes, we are. I think C is the cutoff. So I guess, yeah, we took both courses over the summer. But yeah, I felt like my problem was like I wasn't prepared. My high school was like really new. We didn't have any AP courses. We didn't have a lot of resources. So I felt my high school did not prepare me adequately for, a 4-year college. And they also didn't help that I didn't balance the courses right. Like I felt I was just taking too many hard courses all at once. So that but yes, like I still got into medical school even though I had, bad grades, I guess. Just kind of like, like admissions committees really like knowing that you learn from it, that you're not making that same mistake over and over again. So I retook those courses. From there on, I knew how to balance, each quarter when deciding what classes to take. Like I wasn't going to do all 3 difficult courses. I would do like 2 in a really easy class, something like that. So I don't know if you want to go ahead, May.
Yeah, I actually matched your scores. I got like an Orgo 1, a D in Orgo 1, and then a C in micro, and then like I don't remember like a few other classes. It was like a B and like an A minus. But exactly like what you said. And don't let like a bad semester, for whatever reason it is, whether it's because of academic reasons or external reasons or whatever it is, discourage you that you don't have a chance. It's going to be hard to like make it up and like show that you learned from that mistake or like you did better. And it's also really hard to recover from a hit like that for your GPA. But as long as you can show like an upward trend after that, and you can show that you learned from it and like you knew what went wrong and you were able to address it and like get past it and grow as a person and as an applicant, then it'll be fine. But so yeah, don't let it discourage you.
Awesome. The next question we got was, what did we do to prepare for the MCAT? I'll let Rafael start with that. Rafael, how did you study for the MCAT?
Yeah, so I know a lot of my friends ended up using some of like the official Kaplan courses. So they went like a couple times a week to basically learn how to take the test. So that's definitely an option. I know that Detroit, I forget where, but there are a lot of options sort of like in the Metro Detroit area. I opted for the self-study approach. And I've heard, and I heard different perspectives from people, but I basically allocated 8 weekends prior to the test. So basically I knew my Saturdays were going to be my MCAT study days. So even if I had other responsibilities, I know that I would be in the library by 9. I would study until 5 or 6. And I basically did that for 8 weekends. straight. I used the Kaplan textbooks. I used some of my old notes. I think I went through the entire library for Khan Academy. If you've never used them, definitely use them for a lot of the prereq classes, because you do get a decent overview. Something else, and I think I'm going to send you a list for these as well. If you've never watched the crash course videos on YouTube, the anatomy and physiology one is actually really good to give you a general overview for all of the basic principles that you need to know on the human body standpoint going into the MCAT, because some of those questions do start to sort of like chime in for some of the for like basic physiology, and they're really fun to watch. So it's definitely a good review. And yeah, it's basically just putting in the time and being able to balance your regular coursework or your other responsibilities if you decide to apply after the fact, with like actual study time. You definitely want to make sure that you take some time to actually go through a couple practice tests, just because if you've never sat for 7 hours taking a test, if you don't know, the MCAT is 4 90-minute sections for the most part. And that can be pretty exhausting. I know for me, the psychology and the sociology sections are the last ones, and those were my weakest sections. So if you've never sat a test for that long, and then you get to the tail end, and you get to a part that like you're not strong in at all, it's like a double whammy in the fact that like you're trying to test while you're already like mentally drained. So definitely knowing what you're getting yourself into beforehand is some of the best things that you can do to prepare.
For me, I had been out of school for like 3 years. So I ended my job and I moved back with my parents, and I didn't do anything but study for 3 months. And like, I really needed that because like I had not, like, I'd forgotten a lot of the stuff I did in undergrad, or I just needed like a major refresher. The Kaplan course is pretty expensive, and I honestly don't know if it's worth it. I got practice tests from AAMC, and I did 5 or 6 of those, and I think those were the biggest ones. So I did those like once a week for the 5 weeks until the MCAT, and then yeah, I just studied. It didn't work for 3 months. So I would recommend that approach if it's not fresh. You just take time off school before you take the MCAT, because it is a bit.
Yeah, just to echo what they said. So the two main approaches, as Lily and Raphael said, people either study it on their own using like the course notes from the courses they took, or they actually purchase a course through a private company. And the main one there that people recommend the most is called Kaplan, but there are others such as the Princeton Review. And like Lily said, they are pretty expensive. Like when I took it, it was around $1,800. So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they are pretty expensive. The reason I did it was because I'm somebody who really needs a lot of structure when they study. So for me, it was really useful to have them kind of tell me like, okay, these are the textbooks you need to know, and here are some videos that you can watch, and here are some practice tests, as opposed to just having to sift through like, hundreds of pages of notes from my undergrad courses and trying to make sense of it. So either way, it's totally a thing of personal preference. You'll save a good chunk of money if you study it for on your own. But if you really need somebody, if you're somebody who needs a lot of structure while studying, then a course will be beneficial to you. And also to echo what they said too, is that the MCAT is a test where you need to do a lot of practice questions. So it's not your typical like undergrad test where you kind of have to memorize every detail from the course. The way the MCAT asks questions tests you, it's more about like, your critical reasoning and your ability to like read something and then kind of make sense of it and pick out the important details. And that's where really like practice questions and practice tests are going to be very beneficial. So the general advice is to kind of spend equal amounts of time with practice questions as actually learning the material. And like Lily said, there's tons of practice tests, official MCATs actually that people have taken before as the real MCAT. And you want to practice with those just to get a feel for it, as well as to, like Raphael said, kind of know what it's like to sit down for 7 hours and write a test. Does anyone else want to add anything to that?
I could add to it. I actually took the MCAT 3 times. My first time I scored a 24, and I used Kaplan, but I didn't pay for the going in person, but instead the online version of it, where they had like pre-recorded videos for you and they sent you like the textbooks. I felt that didn't really work for me. It would have, because I also, like Camilo said, I'm a person who needs structure. But at the same time, it wasn't like you kind of had to make up your own schedule of like knowing when you would want to watch the videos or what to start with, like, you know, the like chemistry section or something else or bio. So I kind of regretted not paying more. Like the reason I did the online version was because it was cheaper compared to in-person session. But at the same time, I regret not doing the in-person. I felt I would have benefited more from that. And then the second time I retook the MCAT, I actually got a 21. I went lower. And that one I still use Kaplan because if you don't get the score you want, then they'll give it for you free again. So I did that, but I felt it didn't work. And then when I was speaking to like an admissions committee from, I think it was UC Davis, they told me that because I was disadvantaged, the score of 24 was actually okay for me. So I was like, darn, if only I would have known that I didn't have to retake the MCAT, but I don't know how like true that was. And then the third time I took it was because it was the new MCAT, and that I ended up doing self-study. And then since I was in my post-bac program, they paid for my exam cracker textbooks and they paid for the AAMC practice exams. So doing a lot of practice exams is very beneficial. I would also use the Princeton or Kaplan practice exams. That was helpful. And then, yeah, like I guess self-study was pretty good for me. I kind of at that point knew like my limitations and stuff. I'd wake up super early. I studied, I think, 3 months in total. But in general, for me, I hate them cats like my worst nightmare. It's something you need to get done with.
I never like it.
But that's it.
Yeah, I'm sure like, oh, it's not going to be the happiest time of your life for sure, but there's no way around it. You got to do it.
Mhm.
If you guys have any other questions, just feel free to put them in the YouTube chat. In the meantime, maybe I'll get you guys to tell us a bit about what life in medical school is like. So, May, I know you yourself are pretty involved with extracurriculars and stuff. Maybe you want to talk about your experience, what it's been like so far in your first 2 years in medical school.
Sure, yeah. Okay. It's, as you might expect, a lot of studying, but the nice thing to know, I think, is that you don't have to give up everything that you love doing. So for me, that was service and like being involved in the community. And so I was able to keep doing that throughout the first year and now like going on to second year. And for me, that's something that just keeps me going because I can see like the point of everything that I'm studying as I'm being involved. And so whether that thing for you is like research or whether if you want to stay like involved in whatever it is that you're passionate about, I think it helps to know that your life isn't like a complete black hole. Like your life doesn't end just because med school started. And then another thing is, I think actually never mind. I think that's all I have to say for now. Lily, you're involved in research, and Raphael, do you guys want to talk about that?
Sure. For me, research is a really good way of finding mentorship. So my first year, I was able to find a research mentor who really like aligned with the stuff that I wanted to do, which was more like public health, social determinants of health, social health equity, stuff that I'm really passionate about. So I've been able to find that at med school. That being said, I do have to budget time. So that's been interesting, like the first year and a half, learning how to juggle like time constraints, because you really can't, to be a doctor, you have to like learn the material. You can't like say, no, I'm not gonna learn this, what I mean? Like you can in some undergrad courses, you really have to sit down and do it. It was challenging learning that balance. But honestly, I think your brain just grows stronger. So you're like able to learn how to take in material like quicker and be more efficient. So that's been fun. And like I said, you don't have to give up everything. So like for me, research is really important, and like this group, the Latino Medical Student Association, is really important to me. So you find ways. It's definitely challenging. I'm not going to say it's a walk in the park, because it's not. But everyone around you is going through the same thing. So you have people to lean on.
And
And,
I could add more if you want me to.
well, one thing I wanted to say, something for you guys to look forward to, is that in medical school, actually all your courses are streamed, so you don't actually have to go to class anymore. You just stay at home in your PJs watching lectures. So that's some to look forward to for sure. Louisa, you want to add anything?
Yeah, just like I felt before coming to medical school, I would hear that, undergrad was very competitive, and in med school, it's more like everyone wants to help each other out. And I felt like, yeah, I've experienced that where, if you tell like a friend you're like struggling with something, they'll like give you advice on like other resources they use or anything, it's not really about like, I want to be better than you. So yes, it's like med school is very dense, like May said, like there's a lot of like studying to do. And there's also a lot of resources as well. So I struggled my first year with deciding kind of what worked for me. Like every unit, I was changing my study methods because I realized like I do better when I go to lecture rather than streaming, or this other source works better for me. So it's a lot of like figuring out what works for you. And then once you figure that out, just sticking with it. So knowing that, and then don't forget about like having fun as well. Like even though there's so much material and like we technically should be studying, but at the same time, self-care is very important for your own sanity. So I try to balance that, like I try to still do the stuff I love doing, not just study. So. Yep.
Yeah, something that Louisa touched on that I think you guys will also appreciate is that lots of medical schools, including Wayne, have been switching to pass-fail curriculums, meaning you're no longer given a letter grade the way you are in undergrad. You're actually just given whether you pass or you fail, and our pass rates are actually, our pass lines, I should say, are actually pretty lenient. Like if you study what you should, then you shouldn't have any problems passing the course. And that really contributes to, like they said, a really positive school morale, school atmosphere. Everyone, instead of trying to compete and being the best, everyone's cooperative and feels like they can help each other. Rafael, do you want to add anything? What has your life in medical school been like?
Yeah, so it's just the realization that you can do your own thing, and really, you, at least for the first 2 years, as long as you find your own rhythm, you don't need to compare yourself to other people as long as you're passing your courses and you're understanding the material. Obviously, I think personally, the really nice thing getting to med school is that there's like this little interest that you have that like drives you to medicine, right? So even though you don't know whether or not you want to go into like neurology or general surgery or something like that, maybe there are some aspects of the curriculum that you don't like, or there are other parts of the curriculum that you really prefer. Starting to learn a lot about these things, even though it's a ton of information, helps a lot of things make sense in terms of why you're interested in medicine, why you're interested in going and like studying the human body, like providing healthcare to the community. And that's a little bit of something that drives you. You just need to make sure, obviously, that you coordinate your schedule, that you're really honest with yourself about how much time you actually need to study. You don't actively need to compare yourself to other people. There are some people that go to the library at the med school and like stay there until closing time. You don't need to do that every single day, especially because some schools have sort of like a staggered curriculum. So for instance, for us, some of us have like clinic practice days on certain days. And it's just being able to find that balance. The biggest challenge for me, like I said, was just being honest with yourself in terms of how much time you need to dedicate to thoroughly understanding the material, because obviously it sort of builds. I think one of the things that we're sort of realizing right now is that the stuff that we learned during first year wasn't just something that we had to understand to pass those tests. Everything sort of builds, and it's just going to keep building at this point forward. So you just want to make sure that you put in the time to sort of grow your skill set. Yeah, and like I've been really fortunate in the fact that basically all the people that I interact with at the med school are really supportive, which is really nice because even in undergrad, Sometimes you tended to have like certain cliques even within your own major. But if you're friendly and you're outgoing, it's really easy to find like a nice network of support. And as long as you're honest with yourself and you're like, and you're good towards like your fellow med student, I think that it's very easy to just keep going.
Okay, so the next question we got is, I don't have the community service in my application for the program I want to get into. Any suggestions? I'm not sure if you mean that you don't have enough community service or if you don't have the right type, because I know that some schools are a little picky as to whether it's volunteering services are clinical versus non-clinical. If it's a matter of maybe not having enough non-clinical volunteering or not enough clinical volunteering, I urge you to just look at different schools and see the specifics of each one. In medical school applications, you can almost apply to any school in the country. They're not really. There's some that are more selected for in-state students, but otherwise, really, the whole United States is fair game for applications. And I wouldn't get so caught up on like a single school or a single program, because the reality is, like any single program, the chances of getting to any one program are fairly low. And we all probably apply to about like 10 to 30 schools. So, expand your range of schools and kind of try to see the one that you fit better into. Also, a lot of us, including myself, did a gap year. So, if you're at the stage where you don't feel like you're ready to apply, it's totally normal, totally common to just take an extra year off school and expand, your clinical activities or whatever it may be that you feel is lacking in your application. I don't know if you guys want to add anything to that as far as, maybe not having enough at the moment or any time that you didn't feel like you were ready to apply and what you did.
I can add something just to what you said. I think if you're asking that you're interested in a specific program, definitely what Camilo said, I would I think a reminder that since the application process is so competitive, the chance of getting into any program is so small. And so a lot of us, I think like the mentality you go into when you apply is that anywhere you get in, you like is where you'll end up going, because it doesn't really matter where you go. But if you are set on a specific program for whatever reason, you can like if you just like kind of explore around on their website, every school has like a different focus in terms of like what they like care most about, or like what their like mission statement is and like stuff like that. So if you kind of explore on their website, or like if you contact their admissions or like people who actually go to that school to like kind of get a feel on what is most important to that school. But in terms of community service, I feel like the best way to go is find what you enjoy most and like put in hours into that, or else you're gonna be miserable doing it and you're not really gonna get anything out of it. And in terms of like what kind of community service is preferred, I haven't heard of that being, I think, for like per school. So I would go with like find something that you enjoy doing and like kind of throw yourself into that.
Mm-hmm. And then also how like we mentioned about like being well-rounded, like if a school like not like sometimes like they do like having certain things, but you could compensate if you don't have that by having other things in your application. So don't worry if you have that, or expand, like go apply to other schools as well. So keep that in mind. And then what Camilo said, gap year, like if you like be honest with yourself. I felt I was very hard-headed and I didn't like, I knew my stats weren't good, like my MCAT, my GPA, but I was like, no, like I have to apply. I cannot, like, I want to be like a traditional student. And then I felt that's what affected me for getting into med school that first time, because I didn't have the stats that I needed to be a competitive applicant. So if you feel you're lacking in something in your application, like be honest with yourself, like consider like maybe like you could compensate because you have other stuff, or maybe you do need that gap year to like, like do that specific thing that you're lacking in.
And I'll just say that the average age at Wayne State, I think, is 25. So if you're, I don't know how old you guys are right now listening, but if you're like 22 and you like feel like you're late on the game because you haven't applied right away, you're actually early because the average is 25. And I'll just say for gap years, for me, I think it was the best decision I could have made to take those gap years, because in those years I learned a lot of skills that I didn't really cultivate in undergrad, like whether it be like work, just like how to like talk to people, and like work ethic, and like how to work in teams. Like you learn a lot of like life skills, I feel like, that sometimes it's hard to get while you're in school because you don't work in teams as much. So I think there's a lot of good things coming out of taking gap years. So don't be afraid or feel like you're a failure in any way if you have 2 years.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks. So yeah, sometimes I think something you need to remember as well is if you're like applying this year, or maybe you're close to applying, sometimes we sort of get caught up in the details that you need to have like a check next to every single box for like the ideal applicant. And odds are, if you feel that like you're a little bit weaker on community service, you've been trying to focus on other things that you can probably talk about, some other things that you're probably passionate about. It doesn't mean that like you don't have empathy towards like the people in your community. Maybe it's just like you've been focusing on other things, like people said. If you're dealing with, I'm going at this from the angle, let's say you're applying this year, you still have time. Just because like you're in the process of like submitting your application doesn't mean that you don't have the opportunity to still do community service to sort of round yourself out a little bit more. What a lot of people sometimes forget is that the only thing schools are going to see once you submit your primary application, like once you hit submit on like the primary, is like the stuff that's on that application to begin with. A lot of people sometimes forget that you can do updates on like the secondary specifically. So maybe you might be talking about how you didn't have a lot of opportunity to do community service up until this point, maybe because obviously being pre-med is hard, so you wanted to focus on your grades or something along those lines. Yep, exactly. So but like we're coming up on the summer, for example, odds are you might have a little bit of extra time, even if you're applying this year, to go out into the community, do service, find that secondary inspiration to sort of go into healthcare. You can always update your secondaries, and even after you submit your secondaries, you can submit updates to say that you did a certain amount of work. What I would say is that if you're going to add these like activities after the fact, don't feel the need to like do community service, especially if you're only going to do something like 15 hours over the course of like 4 to 6 months, because that sort of comes off as though I'm only doing it for the sake of showing that I did some community service, versus actually wanting to do it for the experience, figuring something else about yourself, and actually giving back to the community.
Awesome. So yeah, guys, keep typing your questions if you guys have any questions. Something else I kind of wanted to touch on, because I think it's important for you guys to know. There are other alternatives. Career healthcare. People say biology degree, either you go to med school or do research, but that's not true at all. There's all kinds of other healthcare, such as pharmacy, dentistry, nursing, physician assistant, physical therapist, optometrist, podiatry. There's all kinds of things. So for your options, if you aren't that set on medicine and becoming a doctor, there's also the DO route that a lot of people choose. So MD is the school that we're in, and that's your standard medical doctor degree, whereas DO is what is called a doctor of osteopathic medicine. But they have the exact same practice rights and privileges as MDs, so they can do all the stuff that MDs do, but their admissions tend to be quite a bit competitive. So, a lot of people see it as a backup option to MD, because it is still medical school, and you are still going to graduate as a doctor and be able to do anything a doctor can do, but their admissions requirements are less stringent. So don't be afraid to explore those other options as well.
Can I add something there? Just for the DO programs, even though they tend to be less competitive, it doesn't make them like not competitive. It is also hard to get into those programs, and because osteopathic schools tend to have like a different philosophy than MD schools. They're supposed to be a bit more holistic, even though MD programs are like moving towards being more holistic. An important thing to keep in mind is if you consider applying to those schools, you have to show interest in like the DO philosophy. Like you would have like, things that would have helped is like shadowing a DO physician, or like showing reasons why you would want to go to the schools besides like, oh, I thought it was easier, so I applied to DO too. Just like, side note.
Yeah, the one thing I will add to that though is to avoid Caribbean MD medical schools. Really, if you can avoid those, it's probably not a good idea. Uh, I say this because they advertise pretty heavily to like pre-meds. I know when I was an undergrad, I got tons of like emails and I saw ads all over the place for Caribbean medical schools. And it seems pretty appealing because you get to study in the Caribbean and you still technically graduate with an MD, which allows you to practice medicine in the U.S. But the caveat to this, and the reason why I want to really caution against it, because it's extremely difficult to come back and practice in the U.S. after you graduate from a Caribbean MD. So they may advertise that they have match rates, in like the high 90 percentiles, but in fact, the way they achieve this is like they, for example, hold a lot of students back a year, which in medical school is kind of a big deal because that's 4 years loans that you're not paying back and more years tuition. And they're really stringent about who's allowed to write their licensing exams. So if you're not doing well, they just won't let you apply for the exam that lets you become licensed. So people who've looked into it, they end up seeing that their match rates, even though they're advertised in the high 90s, end up being 40 to 50%, which is compared to like the match rate at Wayne is 98%. So I would caution about that if you guys are like getting advertised about Caribbean MD schools. It is an option if you absolutely have like confidence that you are going to be at the top of your class and that you're absolutely set on MD, then maybe consider it. But for example, we're talking about the DO route. I would definitely recommend that as opposed to a Caribbean MD. And do you guys want to add anything to that about DOs or MDs? Because those are kind of the common paths that people take outside of the classic DO route.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Lisa. Go for it.
No, I was also thinking of like for Caribbean schools, like yes, what Camilo said, it is harder to get in, but also if that's another route you want to do, don't be discouraged. I do have friends who went to three different friends that went to different Caribbean schools, and right now they're doing the residency program back in California. So I guess you make it what you can, like you're unique and stuff. So, depending on what situation you are, you could make the most out of it. So don't just go based off of what other people say. And then there's also PA option. When I was working as a scribe at an urgent care, we had PAs there, and they basically, I didn't even know if like physician assistants were a thing until I started working there, and they basically do everything an MD does. They do have to have their like chart signed off by an MD, and they are restricted on more stuff, but that's another option. It's only 2 years. If you want to get in the healthcare field, but you feel you're not competitive enough for MD, you could also consider a PA route. Or you might just be really passionate about being a PA, so that's another option.
I was just going to add that so I know some people did master's degrees before going into med school to kind of boost their GPA too. One thing I would caution about that is because you're going to get that extra debt, one. And then for me, I was thinking about doing a master's degree, but I ended up doing research where I was able to get publications. And like that was almost like the same weight, if not more, as a master's, because I was able to, and I didn't have to pay anything and got paid to do it. So if you're only doing a master's to boost your GPA, I would look at different research opportunities you can get into, because that's going to save you a lot of money and also give you a different skill set, I think, than the master's. It's just something to think about.
We have one more question. Question is, Are there any undergrad programs you all recommend to participate in? Actually, I'm not exactly sure what you meant by undergrad programs. Whether you talk about majors or more extracurricular activities, but maybe we can go ahead and just as essentially our last question, just answer maybe what was that one activity that we did during undergraduate that we really benefited from and I think really helped us get into medical school? Does anyone want to share?
I'm trying to remember what I was involved in. I'm blanking out on. Oh, it was called IMED, and just kind of like providing healthcare to like internationally. So we did a travel abroad to Nicaragua for a week. So I really love like I've always been interested in underserved communities, and going to Nicaragua, I felt that like really like added to like that like the kind of people I want to serve. And also being Hispanic, it was really nice to be able to, speak in Spanish and, not having someone else translate for me. So it was really good to like be able to connect with the patient. Like I felt I had that advantage. So that helped me. And I can't think of other activities I was in. Oops.
Seems like a while back. Yeah. Anybody else?
So just from the perspective of being at Wayne, I went to an engineering school, which kind of meant that if you wanted to go pre-med, you had to figure out a lot of stuff on your own in fairly last minute. I know that it's one of the biggest issues that a lot of people in my class, friends I went to school with, had when it came to applying to medical school, and it sometimes resulted in people having to apply more than once. Regardless of what you decide to do with your undergrad activities, because you can obviously focus on some of like the more pre-med oriented ones, definitely, if you haven't done so yet, definitely be aware that you have a pre-med office at Wayne and be aware of what they do. It's good because once you apply, they may be the people who are sort of putting together your committee letter. And one of the things I think personally, I would have benefited from is having sort of like the upward mentorship to look at and to sort of provide a little bit of help. Maybe beneficial. Because I've noticed that they host a lot of things about like managing your GPA, figuring out which classes to take, reviewing essays, knowing how to sort of approach the AMCAS application in due time. All of that, speaking as someone who didn't have that guidance, is really beneficial. So even just like being aware that that's something that exists may be good, and they might actually be able to guide you towards some of the more pre-med oriented activities. Like I sort of said in one of my previous answers, don't feel the need that you need to participate in certain activities. I actually think that if you find something more akin to your own personal interests, it makes your own application shine, even if it's like developing a project that you really wanted to do. Like Luisa had her knitting. I did theater for a couple of years when I was an undergrad, just because it was my way to blow off steam, and you can actually sort of integrate it back into what makes you you. Right. So as long as it's not getting in the way of your studies, and it's keeping you sane, I'd say like you can honestly talk about any single activity when it comes to your applications.
Yeah, I think that's something we're all trying to echo in here is that there is not one single activity that's better than the others. What makes an activity great is really what you make out of it and your experience. So pick something that you love and that you're going to be able to commit to, and something that you're going to be able to do with a lot of passion. So, trips to Nicaragua for me was really meaningful for her to be able to serve the Hispanic population. I'm sure that's something that she was able to say for interviews. So it really is what you make of it. And what's great about that is that you get to pick stuff that you're passionate about. Don't feel like you have to do a single one type of activity just because med schools are going to like that activity. Med schools are going to like the activity that you like the most. So that's definitely something. Does anybody else know an activity they did?
So I was part of like a wilderness society. So that had nothing to do with medicine, but we would just we would go hiking together and canoeing like once a week, and we'd have like weekly dinners, and that was a really nice sense of community for me. I think I talked about that in a couple of my secondaries. And it just makes you more of an interesting person if you have something else. Like if you are a musician, like you can talk about that, or if you're like you're a painter, or if you do something creative, like that's awesome. You could talk about that in your applications. In addition to that, I did do a global health group where we would meet every week and talk about different global health issues in the world. And that was just good for me to like help me understand what global health really meant and what it meant to like have a global health career and like the problems and everything that comes with that, and just kind of like the intricacies and the kind of like the critical nature of thinking about health in different settings. But yeah, just like what everyone else says, do what you like.
And another thing to add, more important than like what kind of programs you do participate in is like the duration of for your participation. So it means more that you started off with a program, you participated in it for like a year or 2 years, or like throughout your college years, and that shows like that you're actually committed to it, rather than doing something that you think that the med school is going to like for like a shorter duration.
Good point.
I think we got through all of your questions, guys. If you have any other final questions, just feel free to type them in. If not, you guys all have my email. Feel free to really ask me anything you guys want about the questions you didn't have answered, or something you want some clarification on. So I'll wait a bit just to see if there are any other final questions. Otherwise, it's fun talking to you guys. Good luck.
Camilo, can I add one more thing before, or just in the meantime before any questions come? Just keep in mind like what the timeline is for your application. Make sure that you apply early, because the med school admissions is like on a rolling basis. So you want to apply in early so that schools see your applications first and you get your interviews in, because they start accepting people right away when they give out interviews. So you don't want to wait till the end of the application cycle.
And I guess just something to keep in mind, just especially since most of us are on the leadership, and again, Camilo and Lisa, thank you so much for setting this up, because experiences like this, I think, are really good for people, especially now that the semester is done. If you have any particular questions, reach out to us, guys, like regardless of the time of year. Obviously, like applying to medical school is very much like a continuous process. We have sort of like these panels and whatnot, but you may not be at a particular point where like you're actively applying, but there's always stuff that you can start doing at different times of year. So definitely know that we're here in the medical school, even though it's a little bit of a walking distance between main campus. If you ever want to like meet, like reach out and talk, definitely I think Camila will be really good about keeping sort of this communication afloat. So don't doubt about sending an email if you have questions, and probably there's enough people on the board with enough experience that somebody will probably be able to answer.
Definitely, we're always open to, if you guys have an idea for an event, suggest to us, or like we've all said, have any questions to ask us. We are busy, but we're more than happy to help you guys, because we were in your shoes once, and we know how tough it could be. So
just one more thing real quick. If anyone is interested in HIV research, I'm looking for a undergrad research assistant that's paid. So you can just let me know and we can chat more about that.
And if you're interested in unpaid work, but are interested in working and learning about issues with the opiate crisis and how these drugs sort of affect the body, we do have a couple contacts with some of the work that's done through the Tolan Park Research Office. So if you feel that you have some time over the summer and would like to get involved in that, also please reach out to us, because I can point you in the right direction.
Awesome. Yeah, I know when I was an undergrad, I had a tough time finding research, emailing like every professor from the school department and just like begging them to give me a chance. But you guys have a couple contacts already. Just feel free to email us, and maybe we can set you up with some research. Anything else you guys want to add? Final thoughts or anything?
I think one thing is, since pre-med is really tough, and if it makes you feel better, I think that the hardest part is like the pre-med part, like getting through med school. Even though med school is tough, But I think one thing to keep in mind is make sure that you know what you're signing up for. Make sure that med school really is what you want. And I think the way to figure that out is like to do some shadowing, because once you're in like that clinical setting, you do see like what the physician does and what the PA does and the nurse and like all these different important people in the healthcare team, and you will have like a better idea of what you really want to do.
Cool. Okay, that's a good note to end it on. So thank you guys so much for joining us. This was fun. We hope to do more stuff like this in the future. Like I said, any other questions, just feel free to shoot us an email. Fully available to you guys. And good luck and enjoy your summer. Thank you guys. Bye.